Mark Wallace is executive editor of the ConservativeHome website and an expert on data campaigning. Matthew McGregor is a digital strategist who worked on the Obama 2012 campaign and advised Ed Miliband for the 2015 general election. I asked Matthew McGregor how important data is when it comes to transforming a message into votes.
Data is hugely valuable for campaigns in ensuring that messages get to the right people. If you think about it in a traditional term, it's the difference between knocking on every door in the street and saying the sort of lowest common denominator message versus knowing who's behind each door and what might work for them, whether they're a sometimes Labour voter versus an every time Labour voter. So data transferred to literally millions of people with lots of information about what they care about and where they're at is tremendously valuable. And I think that while there are obviously, as we're talking about, lots of examples of nefarious use of data, I think it's important to remember that campaigns and vibrant campaigns are part of the lifeblood of democracy.
And Mark, what do you make of the Cambridge Analytica so-called revelations in the last week or so? Have you been surprised by some of these claims, or do you think this is the snake oil salesmen just overselling themselves?
Well, I think there are two different things going on. The first thing is the very specific allegations about what data they had gained access to via Facebook, as is alleged, and exactly how they're using it, and apparently ways that they weren't allowed to, which is obviously a serious problem. And it's completely right that the Information Commissioner is looking into that. Arguably, you've got to wonder whether it was wise to say beforehand, we will be looking for a warrant to investigate this. But one way or the other, whether that was a cunning move or not, there are clearly concerns about wrongdoing. But there's a danger, I think, that gets elided with the whole idea of targeted campaigning. It would be a big mistake, I think, to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that what we shouldn't do is allow campaigns to find out which voters might be sympathetic to them, what they might be interested in, and try to talk to them about it. But they've got to do it, obviously, within the rules on things like data protection.
And Matt, do you think that there's a real grey area here between what's legally and what's ethically acceptable when it comes to campaigning and use of data?
I think there is, and Cambridge Analytica have shown that. The rules and how the rules are enforced hasn't kept up with the possibilities. And I think most campaigners on the left and the right try to operate within ethical boundaries as well as legal boundaries, but there are obviously some nefarious actors, and the rules need to be changed. And I think regulators in particular need to be really empowered. They're vastly outmatched at the moment. You know, the transparency of ads needs to be increased. There's no reason why the Electoral Commission shouldn't require the political parties to post online all of the ads that they are running, along with some general information about the data targeting that they've got, so they can be held to account, and there's not the temptation to be more negative if you think you're not going to be seen doing it than if you were putting it on a billboard, for example. The key thing is the way in which the rules, number one, aren't keeping up, and number two, can't be enforced quickly enough. There's no point enforcing the rules 6 months after an election is over.
You worked on the Obama campaign in 2012. What do you make of these claims that what you did then actually is no different from what Cambridge Analytica tried to do with Trump?
Well, the Obama campaign pulled in Facebook data with users' permission in a transparent way, but they did also then access friends of friends data, which was allowed under the rules at the time, and the Obama campaign was open about it. They used that tactic to try and increase voter registration and to increase voter turnout. The Cambridge Analytica approach is to break the rules, be surreptitious about it, and then apparently, according to Trump people, use that data targeting to try and increase racial division to suppress voter turnout in the 2016 election. So there are some commonalities in terms of the functions, the tech functions that are going on, but there's no comparison between what the Obama campaign was trying to do in its campaigning and what the Trump campaign did. They're totally different things.
Did they dispute that, whether or not there was a racial element?
No, they're on the record saying it in an article a couple of weeks before the election campaign. I mean, refreshingly honest, I guess you can say. They deliberately targeted African-American voters with information that they thought would turn them off Hillary Clinton, and they were open about it.
And Mark, obviously you've worked on the 2015 general election and the 2017 general election. In what ways were each of those different, do you think, when it came to the data wars between the two parties?
In 2015, I think there was a general assumption, particularly on the part of various parts of the Labour Party, that they were going to walk in on a national mood. And there was a great deal of shock, I think, when the Conservative Party did, alongside other tactics, produce a very well-targeted campaign in some key marginals where they'd done an awful lot of groundwork over the previous couple of years, including a lot of door-knocking, a lot of ringing people up, a lot of asking people what they thought. And they effectively won a majority on the back of a few hundred voters. In 2017, though, the Conservative Party fell for its own spin. It didn't look back on 2015 and go, oh, we just edged it that time, let's make sure we're working from day one. They, even in late 2016, were laying people off from their digital operation on the basis that an election was so far away. They called a snap election, took themselves by surprise, and suddenly found they didn't have any up-to-date data. They didn't have a good targeting team, and they had, therefore, a model which, when it came under pressure in the campaign, failed them badly.
Mark Wallace and Matthew McGregor on the dangers of the data game.